Welcome, everybody. My name is Jeff Green, president of Green Team Realty. Thanks for joining us for the February 2021 housing market update. We have some good data here for everybody and a great panel lined up. So let's jump right in to our stats and our presentation and whatnot. All right, so it was a banner year in 2020. In fact, it was, as the NAR states, there were more existing home sales than any other year since the Great Depression in 2020. And it was up from 2019, which was also a banner year as well. So the year finished out in a big way. We know that. We updated you on that at the last housing market update, but I just wanted to reiterate that. Here's something that we didn't know, and this is an interesting metric that I got from Adam data, which was that home seller profits skyrocketed in 2020. And of course, you would assume that, right, with prices going up and the busy market that we had. But it was interesting to look at the actual raw numbers. Profit on a typical sale in 2020 was 68,000, close to 69,000, call it, up from 53,000 in 2019 and 48.5 in 2018. So it's like many times I said last year was that, you know, the sellers were really the ones benefiting from that market last year. But realtors was kind of hard. It wasn't that there were necessarily that many more transactions, right? And you can see that, you know, it was only a 5% increase from 2019, but the amount of money that was being made by the sellers was historic. And that's a good thing, quite frankly, because a lot of sellers took huge hits after the Great Recession. So price projections for 21 from all of these different organizations that are influential within the real estate market are all signaling another year of good price appreciation with an average of 5%. Now, historically, you know, the housing market appreciates roughly, call it 4%, but it's really more like 3.8% historically over the course of decades. So a 5% increase is a good number. It's a solid number for sure. You have to take a look at mortgage rates, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the mother's milk of the whole thing is people's ability to get a mortgage. And one of the things that's been driving this sustained market, as well as the affordability of it, is the low mortgage rates. And a lot of the projections are showing that rates are going to start to climb through 21 and 22. But if you notice the numbers down here, and this is, again, a 30-year fixed, right? You'll be able to see that, you know, you're not talking major increases. If you look down here, you know, we're currently at 2.8, 2.9. They're talking about a gradual increase to 3.2. So really not much of an increase, but, you know, if you're a buyer who's looking to buy a home, you know, north of 500 or up into the millions, it's certainly going to cost you a little bit more down the line than it will right now. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, how it's actually still important that buyers stay focused and get their transactions done. And here's just a breakdown on some of the actual numbers from the actual organizations that are making these projections. So you can see that they're climbing up into the threes through the first quarter of 2022. So inventory is the real story. I think my next slide, I put the deck together yesterday, but it's escaping my memory. But next slide will show you how historic the inventory is right now. It is so low. This is only showing back to September of 2020, and you can see it's less than half or about half of what it was. So the higher the number, the more inventory. The lower the number, the lower the inventory that is on hand for buyers to choose from. So it is historically low. Right here's the quote from NAR. Total housing inventory at the end of December totaled 1.07 million units, down 16.4% from November, just 1 month before, and down 23% from a year ago. So unsold inventory sits at an all-time low at the current sales pace, down from 2.3 months in November and down from 3.0 month figure recorded in December of 19. So it's at the lowest point since the NAR began tracking it in 1982. That's how tight inventory is on a nationwide basis. So we've been talking about inventory for a long time now, and it's gotten tighter and tighter. It hasn't gotten better. we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to our panel. So what is the consensus of people working from home? Are they going to continue working from home? So this was a panel that the NAR put together. And basically the percent of workers working from home, the 2019 actual was 6%. It jumped to 21% in 2020. And it looks like it's going to trend downwards. But still, if you look at what the forecast is for 2022, it's double what it was from 2019. So it's still a significant increase. It seems as if there has been a fundamental change in work from home strategies that companies are employing. And it seems that many have seen the benefits of it, quite frankly, like we have at Green Team Realty, and the benefits that it can give to people's lives as well as to the business. And I think that they're going to be restructuring their business models. So, something to consider. Here's a little bit of troubling news. According to Random Lengths, and I got this from the National Association of Home Builders, the price of lumber hit a record high this week, and that was just in the month of January, and is up more than 170% over the past 10 months. That's a problem. That's a real problem. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. New home sales activity, both mortgage applications and home sales, ran at a pace considerably ahead of 2019, showing the ongoing strong growth in housing demand and new residential construction. So prices of lumber and materials are up, but needless to say, the new home sales activity for mortgage applications and the actual sales is ahead of 2019. And I don't have an actual metric or a source, but from what I hear and what I listen to, there are a lot of, building permits being granted. So a lot more new construction, in theory, should be coming online in 21 here. So what about the forbearance situation that we had right when COVID hit? Do you remember? Again, if you're watching the housing market update, you probably do, right? We talked extensively about this and we were a little bit concerned about what this meant and what was going to happen. So in other words, let me back up a little bit. What happened was initially there was a massive forbearance opportunity for anybody that had a mortgage. They could just decide to stop paying their mortgage for a certain amount of time. And it was really a panic thing for the banks, right? Because if you can imagine, all of your borrowers just deciding not to pay their mortgage one month, obviously that would cause a major strain on the system. Thankfully, most people continued to pay their mortgage and ride things out and just see where things went. But quite a few people did get into the forbearance program. So we're here, coming up on a year later from when this was put into place. Actually, if you look here, it was from June. So we're about, 8-9 months in. So we're coming up on, that mark, and it looks like we're in pretty good shape. 51% are paid in full, meaning that they either paid off their mortgage or they've paid up their forbearance that was past due. 33% worked out a repayment plan, and 15.3% are still in trouble. Now, these are not numbers of all mortgages in the United States of America, just the ones that went into the forbearance plan. So one would have to think, with the tightening of inventory around the country, that even if this, these 15.3% who are still in trouble, right? The 1.9% repayment plan plus 13.4%, the market would easily absorb those homes. I don't think there's any question about that. So we really just plainly do not have an impending foreclosure problem. It's just not apparent right now at this point in time. Here is a very important thing to look at and to consider, and this has a lot to do with rates, right? This is the Housing Affordability Index from 1990 to today. So the higher the number, the more affordable it was to buy a home. The lower the number, the harder it was for buyers to buy homes. So you look all the way back here at 1990, and it was at the lowest rate, tied with 2006. 2006 was truly the peak of the last boom right before the financial crisis. So you look at the low in 2006, market crashes, then we jog out to 2012, which was really kind of the trough of the marketplace, if you will. Although in our area, things just really didn't come back around until 2016. I mean, prices just did not start increasing in our local marketplace in the New York metro area until 2016. So when you look at where we were, 197 is the mark, and we're currently at 168. Things are still pretty good in terms of affordability. It may not seem that way with all the tightness and everything that's going on and prices rising, but interest rates are so low. They factor in levels of income and availability to get a job, so on and so forth. So affordability remains strong. That's a very good thing. And then we're going to leave off on this before we get to our housekeeping items. But this is important. Once you include the equity benefit of price appreciation, owning made more financial sense than renting in 48 out of the 50 top markets, with the only exceptions being San Francisco and San Jose. So the dream of home ownership is still very much alive, and it should be. And one other factor to consider is that in this housing boom, the rental market has also boomed and has also increased greatly. So in other words, the cost of renting has gotten more expensive as well as the cost to buy. So again, it's still a better deal to buy something than to rent, which is good. We want most Americans, or all Americans who are desiring to buy a home. That's what we do. We help people get into homes. That's our job. So let's take a look at the housing market stats in the U.S. as a whole. We're always a little bit lagged because the NAR, puts their numbers out later than we get them locally. So we're looking just at the full year of 2020. No surprises here. Existing home sales went up. Pricing went up. Months of supply of inventory, we just talked about that, way down. So it's truly a supply and demand marketplace, right? Supply is very low, demand is really high. That's the reason why you're seeing prices go up. So that's a good thing, right? Because it's not necessarily, the market, what's happening in the marketplace is not playing out because of government policy or, particular types of financing being rolled out, so on and so forth. It's a true supply and demand situation, which is good because that's how markets should work. So when you look more at a local level, what we start to see is January's numbers here. So check this out here in Orange County. Look at that number of units sold. Look at the variance. That's a major increase right there for January. You could see the previous 4 years, the grouping was pretty close in January, but it just, boom, came right out of the gates. High in price as well. You can see pricing left off right here, just under the 358 mark, and that's where we've started in January. So it doesn't look like, pending any major global changes to things, I don't think this thing's going to stop anytime soon. Sussex County, just south of the border, similar situation, just not as much of an increase in units sold, but nonetheless, a big step up from previous Januaries. And then look at the price here in Sussex, picking right up where it left off from January of 2020, December of 2020. All right, so just some housekeeping items. We're going to be doing the housing market update Tuesday, March 15th at noon. That's our new time, noon. And thanks to our sponsor, NewOp, the Business Opportunity Exchange. You can sign up at newop.com. All right, let's go out to our panel at this point. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce everybody. I see Barbara Tessa up in the left corner. Barbara, you can just give us a wave. Pam Zakowski. Pam and Barbara are both from Green Team New Jersey Realty. In fact, all of our realtors here today are from Green Team New Jersey Realty. We're Jersey strong today. Karen Gonen, give us a wave. And then we see Mike Gianetto right there from Cross Country Mortgage, and Christy Anderson. Okay, so let's get right to it. You guys were listening. You saw the charts and the stats and all this. Christy, I'm going to come to you first, and I want to ask you a little bit about new construction. You can unmute your mic now. Are you and your buyers seeing more new construction options out there? Are you seeing signs for new subdivisions that may be coming at certain times? Can you tell us a little bit about new construction inventory?
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit of new construction, but not probably as much as we need.
Yeah.
With all of the buyers that we have on the market, new construction would definitely help fill that void.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a little bit, but we definitely need more.
Yeah, not enough. Well, it'll be interesting to see if
Right.
more builders are going to start to get more aggressive. I still think that the right to build process is such a challenge in our local area. The planning boards are not easy. And I'm not saying that they should be. It's a tough, arduous process with lots of engineering and lots of tests and hoops that they have to jump through. And it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like, we need more homes to, be built because people need a place to stay. But those who are already here don't necessarily want more homes built in their backyard.
Right.
So it's a tough one. All right, so I wanted to ask everybody, all of our panelists, Barbara, Karen, Christy, and Pam, if you feel, and I just want to give a yes or no, and I'll ask Barbara, you first. Are you seeing more seller prospects than you normally do this time of year? Or is it about the same?
It's about the same for me, but I know it's a yes or no. However, I know a lot of people who want to go on the market, and their concern is, if they do sell, where do they go if they want to downsize? Because the pool of buyers is so big, everything's getting multiple offers. So they're afraid to go on the market. So
Right.
I think the desire's there, but they're not there yet.
Right, because they have a lack of a choice on the other end.
Exactly.
So in other words, your answer is no. You're not seeing more listing prospects come out of the woodworks than you normally do this
Right.
time.
They're prospects, but they're not there yet.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay. Karen, what about you? Are you seeing more, less, or about the same?
I'm seeing more.
More. Okay, so you're a yes. Christy, what about you?
I agree with Barbara. I have people that are just not ready yet, and same thing, they don't know where they're going to go. Also, the weather's playing a factor. They don't want all these people coming through with their dirty shoes and everything. So they're, in of course, the presentation, when you take the pictures,
right.
Spring's in the air, it's a much better presentation. So definitely have more wanting to come on, just waiting for the weather to improve and figuring out. Like,
well,
Barbara,
that to me is a yes. That to me is a yes, because if people are, if in other words, if you're experiencing more people that are reaching out to you saying, hey, we're thinking about selling, but we have this, that, the other thing, if it's delayed, that's okay, but it means that the inventory is probably going to come. Wouldn't you think though, how many people, actively reach out to you and then don't list their home? I mean, it's usually by the time they actually pick up the phone and call, they're within 6 months of getting the house on the market. Is that fair to say? Or?
It is
6 months.
Yeah, usually 90 days or a month or whatever it may be. So if the phones are ringing, that means the inventory is coming. People will find a way to get it done. So
I think the other thing that we need to consider is that the weather is actually pushing people out of this area. I have quite a few sellers that are moving out of state to warmer states, and I did say we should do it now better than later. And then, all hell broke loose and we had ice and snowstorms. So I have people that are ready now just because of the last few weeks' weather.
What about you, Pam? Are you a yes or a no for this one?
I'm gonna make it short and sweet and say yes.
Okay. All right. So we have 3 yeses and 1 no. So it seems like more inventory is going to come. Now, one other interesting thing that I have just noticed, and look, I haven't done a ton of research on data into this, but it's just a gut feel, is that there were some commissions that I signed off on last year of listings that I know were listed 4, 5, 6 years ago. That just, for whatever reason, they were problematic. They wouldn't quite sell. There was something wrong with them, or they were way overpriced or whatever it was. So I saw that last year there was really like a cleansing of the market. Like everything just got gobbled up. It was like locusts came through and just clear cutted, everything, and there was like nothing left. So I wonder if that's going to play into this year's numbers, and really truly maybe that's why inventory is so tight, because even that inventory that had been hanging on for all those years and months previously, it got absorbed by the market. And those just aren't there this year in 2021. So I wonder if it's going to be you know, a more challenging, even more challenging for us because there's going to be even less inventory this year. I don't know, hopefully not, but that could be a factor. All right, Barbara, what about appraisals? This is always an important thing. Are appraisals still coming in? Are you finding that the appraisers are not agreeing with the agreed upon prices between the buyers and the sellers?
I would say overall, most of my listings or sales, they have appraised. It's a little nuanced because sellers are so engaged with getting over list price that sometimes they let those extra dollars cloud their decision, and they'll pick someone that's way over list, and then there is an issue. So then you have to negotiate, well, how much over the list price is a buyer willing to cover above an appraisal price? And that's a tough thing because once the seller hears that extra dollars, they don't want to negotiate down.
Right.
So I try to caution them to be very careful to choose someone that's so way out of, 20, 30, 40,000 above list price. Will it appraise? It might, but it might not. And then you're back to square one sometimes.
Right. And even if the buyer states in that negotiation that they will agree to, bridge the gap if the appraisal comes in, they don't necessarily have to,
Yeah.
if and when it comes
we
in.
put it in a couple of
you could still be
contracts.
3 weeks out,
Yes. Yeah,
and then have to start all over again.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's
good
tough.
point. All right, Pam. I get the sense that, clearly we're in a seller's market, right? And there's an old adage in real estate. You always know what market you're in by which client is the bigger pain in the butt. In other words, who's more rigid than others. And I think right now sellers are pretty rigid. I've had a few instances recently with agents coming at me with problems where, they were aggravated that, the seller would not do anything on the inspection. They wouldn't fix an outlet in the wall, they wouldn't do anything. Are you finding that sellers are in complete control and they're just not negotiating on inspections? And in other words, should buyers just consider it a foregone conclusion that they're probably not going to get anything from the inspection and they're going to need to move forward?
I always preface my buyers when they've gotten an inspection that what type of market it is, and that the seller may not be willing to negotiate anything. But funny thing is that I found, at least in the transactions that I have done, that sellers are somewhat more lenient in doing repairs or doing or giving a credit towards something. And I think it's because of the situation that COVID, people don't want anybody else traipsing through their house. They want this deal to work. I think they're being a little more flexible. So they are getting some things done. I'm not saying that they're giving carte blanche, but definitely like the bigger ticket items are getting addressed.
Okay, so you're still able to negotiate on behalf of the buyers. They're not, so in general, that you don't feel that the sellers are just saying, tough, you know what, we're moving on, take it or leave it.
No, I'm not saying that I haven't come across those, but
Right.
in majority, they've been somewhat flexible.
Okay. And everybody else on the panel, would you kind of agree with what Pam said, that there's still opportunity to negotiate things for the buyers? The buyers don't need to be afraid necessarily.
I think they can always try, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. Especially when they feel they're paying over list price. They feel like they
Right.
should be able to.
Right.
I
Okay.
do agree with that, but I think sellers, it really depends on the agents as well, sellers agents and buyers agents, because you don't know what the other agent is telling the other party. So I did have a house that failed on the septic and the agent said, we're giving you $10,000. Well, the septic in that location would be $30,000. So essentially you're giving me so little of what I actually need and the buyers are walking away. And that's why houses come back on the market, because sellers are not necessarily willing to address it, but at the right price, with the understanding that, hey, we're ready to go, we can close in 2 weeks, there's more of an option. So I think using a good agent is super important, especially in this market more than ever, on both listing and buying side.
So that's a good parlay into the next question that I have for you, Karen. Good parlay there. And it is about this issue of for sale by owners and discount brokerages. And, you know, I mean, look, how can you blame somebody for trying to save a buck, right? We all do it. But the question is, do you save a buck on such an important transaction of buying or selling your own home? And we find that, you know, I guess my question for you is, are you seeing more and more listings out there that are listed with these discount brokers that basically put everything on the client themselves? They tell you to call them to schedule, submit your offer to them, and they take, you know, whatever X amount of money just to put it on the MLS. Are you finding more of those? And if you are, how difficult is it to deal with those transactions? As a buyer, how difficult is it?
So I am finding more of those because, like you said, people are looking to pay less. I've done several deals where literally the only thing the listing agent did is put it on the MLS and nothing else. There was no conversation.
Right.
I essentially was a dual agent doing both sides for half the price. Again, this is why you should have a good buyer's agent, because many agents will not show FSBOs because, and that's for sale by owners, because they're looking for representation. So they know that they're going to have to do double the work for half the price. Whereas certain agents like me are saying, I just want to get my buyer a house. I do most of the work myself anyway, so who cares if I do double? So it really just depends on the sellers and how much they're willing to negotiate with the buyer's agent. Because I have had sellers that were fully engaged and I was essentially, in a way, unfortunately, also representing them, but obviously my fiduciary duty is to my buyers. It is difficult for agents, it's doing double the work, but some of us will do it because we just want to get a house for our buyers, whatever the cost to us may be.
All right, so Mike, let's transition the discussion over to you. Let's talk mortgages here, talk turkey there. You saw the charts, you saw the projections from the organizations in my presentation, who are substantial. Do you agree rates are headed up this year?
I think yes is the answer, and we're going to get there sooner than later. The last couple of days we did not have good days in the market environment, and it's going to push them up faster. And we have a lot of factors that are going on right now that you know could affect the rates in general. We've been pretty safe with the language coming from the Fed, you know, saying that there's no reason for them to raise any rates, and they're kind of sitting tight. But I think that this is a situation that can be like a rubber band and snap back really quickly if that economic information changes. And certainly the Fed and government printing money doesn't help us.
Right.
You know, so every time we do a stimulus package, it hurts us.
Right. Yeah. You know, it's such a politically charged discussion, just the issue of stimulus, you know, that I don't really even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But you just hope that, you know, our leaders are trying to be frugal and not, you know, and realize that, you know, the amount of quantitative easing that's already happened is record setting, and we almost don't even really know kind of what territory we're in because we've never been this far in it before in modern economic history. So, you know, hopefully cooler heads will prevail and we just kind of maybe take on a path of frugality here for a little while, you know, but we'll see.
I still think rates will stay low. We'll still have plenty of purchasing power, you know, and all the factors that you guys are talking about. As long as we have inventory, we're going to have buyers.
Right. Now, right, exactly. But what about programs? You know, the one thing that has, because, you know, I as an entrepreneur in the real estate industry was bitten so hard by that downturn that occurred after the financial crisis. And a lot of that was due to, you know, fancy financial engineering on these mortgages and the mortgage-backed securities and this, that, the other thing. Are you seeing no-doc loans come through, income stated? You know, are you seeing a proliferation of those types of things, or is it still with the lid?
Well, you have the non-QM, non-qualified mortgage programs that were really, really strong up until literally when the pandemic started and the shutdown. that it dropped out. There was not one bank, not one program out there, portfolio lender, nothing. They just stopped non-QM.
So for the purposes of everybody watching this, explain what non-QM means.
So for a regular mortgage, there's an ability to repay that you have to show and prove within a file.
Mhm.
So there's other factors that become a qualified mortgage that fall under the guidelines of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and HUD, that kind of, that it's under that umbrella. Anything else can be considered non-QM, where they can do things that are outside the box, that are a bit creative, such as a bank statement deal or reduced documentation. The no docs weren't as popular. Those programs didn't come back because of some compliance. There were some out there, but very, very strict. It had to fall outside the guidelines and compliance, and so there were just very few in the no doc space. But there were plenty in the bank statements, in a limited doc or a hybrid of showing some W-2 income, some bank statements, things of that nature. So the non-QM was a lot of subprime is the best way to describe it, right, from prior to the crisis. But it has not come back to where it was prior to the pandemic starting. So there are some that did come back, but
walk me back here. Before the pandemic started, in comparison to where the loan programs were, let's say back in 2005 and 2006, was there any comparison to how many of those loans were being written, or were they much less?
It was much less. It's much less.
And now it's even much less than what it was.
Correct.
So
Correct.
It's almost non-existent at this point.
Even that, I mean, there's other rules and compliance that have to be met that still prevent the Wild West from happening.
Which occurred back in 2005, 2006.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So in my opinion, that translates into, look, whether we like the banks or not, they are very important, right? They're what feeds the industry, and their health is going to determine how much money they're willing to feed the industry with. So to me, the banks seem quite healthy,
I think the banks are healthy, but let me go back to that other, the non-QM a lot of it is self-employed individuals, right? We know the challenges that self-employed are having right now. Even Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac came out with adjusted guidelines for COVID that really restricted for self-employed to be able to get loans easily. Right? We had to have profit and losses done that were good within 60 days. If there was a decrease of more than 20%, automatically, I mean, they were using the lower income. There wasn't even a question about it. And you have to show 3 months of business bank statements to show that the cash flow is what's on the P&L currently. So they're making sure that they have every I dotted and every T crossed for self-employed, which again leads back to the non-QM, which was a lot of the segment was self-employed.
Yeah. Now, one thing that we talked about, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 months ago, was the idea that commercial real estate financing could perhaps be the start of a contagion that could spill over into just the broader banking system. I mean, there are a lot of vacant buildings in a lot of cities around the country right now. And all this talk about people working from home ultimately makes you think whether or not those spaces will ever come back and be filled. So do you have any thoughts on that? I know that you're primarily a residential lender, but I'm just curious to pick your brain while we have you, if there's any information on that discussion.
I mean, not from a financing perspective. I think that the entire segment is damaged right now. Even your slide that said that it's going to go to 18% working from home next year and 12% the following year. It's devastating for commercial real estate. Right? Why would any employer, if they don't have to have that real estate, why would they have it? So I think ultimately it's going to affect the commercial real estate market as well as the commercial financing market.
Yeah, so I mean, look, from my standpoint, what I'm always looking for are what could be the leader to the next downturn, and when is that going to happen? Because that helps me position myself appropriately from a business standpoint. So I just wonder if that's ultimately going to be the leader of what ultimately slows down the housing market, is the fact that commercial, you know, has been hit so hard that it ultimately, you know, messes with the banks, and the banks suddenly have to pull back and things start to tighten up and rates, you know, come up, and suddenly there's not as much demand. And now all of a sudden we have this new construction coming online with all these builders, you know, I mean, that's how these things go. You know, it's a huge lead time in real estate to deliver inventory. It's not like, you know, you can just process more fidget spinners, you know, when that whole thing was going on, it's like, you know, houses take like, it's a long lead time to get it done. So it'll be interesting. Any other thoughts, Mike, that you have for us?
No, I mean, I think we're in for a good market this year, you know, despite a little inching up of the rates. I'm going to be interested to see it. You know, hopefully we all have an amazing year like we had last year.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm here for anybody that needs me.
All right, sounds good. So let's just take a look here at our panel's contact information. These are great people that we want you to be in touch with if ultimately you are thinking about transacting in real estate, buying, selling, renting, whatever it might be. Maybe you just need some advice. You've heard from all of these people, and also our lender, Michael Gianetto, who we work with. A lot of our agents use Mike, and he's a great guy. He's a friend of mine for a long time. So thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll see you next. Well, let's go back and take a look at the date. We're going to see you next month, March 15th, 2021 at noon. Have a good one.